Oh, you have the latest blueprint if you go to VMware's VCA Cloud homepage, just like I did, and click on that green button. If we scroll down, there's a lot in this blueprint, but the main thing that you want to look at, the most important part, are the objectives that are covered in the VCA C510 exam. So I'm going to click on that right here, which will immediately take us down to those objectives. And you can see here are the objectives starting here. And those objectives are broken down into what they call modules. And then each module has objectives with some number of bullets right here, which will immediately take us down to those objectives. And you can see here are the objectives starting here. Search engine and you type in VCA Cloud, it's very likely that the first unsponsored result will bring you to this page, which is the home page for the VMware Certified Associate in Cloud Computing Certification. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll see here there's a big green box that says download the exam blueprint. So it's very easy to do. You don't have to fill out anything anymore. You just click on this link, and that will download and bring up a PDF document that you're free to print if you choose to, that is your blueprint for passing the VCA Cloud according to VMware. Now make sure that you always have the latest exam blueprint. You can see the version number and the date right here. This is the latest blueprint at the time that I'm recording this course, and you'll know you have the latest blueprint if you go to VMware's VCA Cloud homepage, just like I did, and click on that green button. If we scroll down, there's a lot in this blueprint, but the main thing that you want to look at, the most important part, are the objectives that are covered in the VCA C510 exam. So I'm going to click on that right here, which will immediately take us down to those objectives. And you can see here are the objectives starting here, and those objectives are broken down into what they call modules, and then each module has objectives with some number of bullet points. So, for example, there's Module 1, which has Objectives 1.1 and 1.2. There's Module 2, which has Objectives 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, 2.5, and 2.6. And I'll be going over each one of these in more detail in just a second. And then there's Module 3, which really just has Objective 3.1. So there are only 3 modules to the VCA Cloud exam. Blueprint to help you prepare for the exam. Now, the next resource I want to talk about is the VMware product walkthroughs. If you go to featurewalkthrough.vmware.com, you'll see the graphic on the right-hand side here. And what these are really step-by-step screenshots with explanations of each one of these products. So it's not the actual product, but it walks you through doing something in the product using screenshots step by step. So it can be very beneficial in understanding, for example, what is the vCloud suite? What is VMware's distributed switch? What is VMware vSAN? It offers a number of really nice walkthroughs and explanations on these different products. Now, when it comes to cloud computing specifically, I did not yet see a vCloud Automation Center, also known as vRealize Automation, walkthrough on this website yet. Hopefully they will have it, because that's important for the VCA Cloud certification. However, over at VMware Labs, which I'll talk about in just a second, they do have labs on vCloud Automation Center, as well as vCloud Air, which is previously known as vCloud Hybrid Service. So you'll want to make sure that you check out those labs. Moving on, the next resource are the labs that I mentioned, VMware's hands-on labs, which are at hol.vmware.com. Let's go check out that website right now. Here at the VMware Hands-On Lab website, if we scroll down, you can click on the Labs button here and launch the list of labs. And then take a look at the lab catalog. So this is a list of all the labs in the catalog. There are many labs. I've lost count now. I think it's close to 50 or more. And they're broken down into topics over here. So take a look at, for example, the Hybrid Cloud Lab if you're interested in cloud computing, which of course is what this VCA certification is all about. Here underneath Hybrid Cloud, they have a lab on vCloud Air, previously known as vCloud Hybrid Service, and this is a jumpstart for vSphere admins. So if you're familiar with VMware vSphere and the basics of administration, this might be a good lab for you if you're pursuing the VCA in cloud computing. They also have a lab on vCloud Air networking and security and how to manage your cloud. All these would be great labs for anyone who's preparing for the VCA cloud. If we go into all labs, we can go in and we can search the catalog for automation. And if we scroll down, you'll find, for example, that there is a lab on cloud management with vRealize operations. And we have a module in this course specifically on that. There are also labs on the vCloud Suite 101. And we have a module in this course on that. vCloud Automation Solutions. And we have a number of modules in this course on automation as well. A lot of the VCA cloud objectives are related to automation. You can gain hands-on experience to a lot of the products that are covered in the VCA cloud objectives by using VMware's free hands-on lab environment. The next resource is the VMware vCloud Suite 60-day evaluation. So you can download VMware vSphere, VMware vCenter, vCloud Automation Center, vCenter Operations Manager, and all the products that are talked about in this video training course. You can install them on your own servers or in your own lab environment and gain your own real hands-on experience. That can be done for free with a VMware 60-day evaluation license. And while you will spend a lot of time doing it, most likely it is the best single way to gain hands-on experience. But I'll tell you, it will require a fair amount of hardware and a significant amount of time to get everything running and working just so that you can prepare for the VCA Cloud exam. And that's why for the VCA level exams, I usually recommend the VMware Hands-On Lab environment. And another great resource that I have to mention is Pluralsight's library of VMware-related content. There's over 100 virtualization-related courses today in the Pluralsight library, and many of the topics that we cover in the VCA Cloud video training course, all those objectives on the blueprint, in most cases there are separate Pluralsight video training courses on each one of those. For example, vCloud Automation Center, vCenter Operations Manager, VMware vSAN, and so forth. And then finally, this course. I've designed this course specifically around the objectives in the VCA Cloud exam blueprint to give you the best chance possible of passing the VCA Cloud certification exam the first time, as well as to educate you on cloud computing terminology, VMware products, and features. Now I'd like to review in more detail the VCA Cloud Blueprint that we looked at earlier over on the VMware Education website. As you saw, that blueprint specifies the objectives that the exam will cover, and they break those objectives down into 3 different modules. The first module says that you should be able to define the types of cloud computing and discuss the challenges that are associated with them. That module is broken down into 2 different objectives, and those 2 objectives were really summed up in the description from Module 1. Objective 1.1 is the types of cloud computing, and we'll talk about that in the next module in this course. For example, some of those types of cloud computing might be infrastructure as a service, software as a service, and platform as a service. In Objective 2, they want you to be able to discuss the challenges that VMware Cloud products are intended to resolve. For example, if you think about very seasonal businesses, such as retailers who do most of their business during the holiday season, those retailers need very elastic computing. So they need to be able to massively scale up their infrastructure during that holiday season and then massively scale down the infrastructure after the holiday season. It doesn't make sense for them to keep that infrastructure running in their data center year round. The smart thing to do would be for them to use a public infrastructure cloud that has that sort of elasticity that they require. And we'll talk more about that again in the next lesson. Now let's review Module 2 of the VCA Cloud Blueprint, and that is to be able to describe VMware's cloud products, features, and components. So here we're diving more into specific VMware products. For example, VMware vSphere. That's VMware's hypervisor that's installed on all physical servers, ideally across the entire data center. It's managed by VMware vCenter. And then if you want to perform automation, you use something called vCloud Automation Center, which has now been renamed vRealize Automation. Objective 2.1 is to be able to define the components of the software-defined enterprise. And I've got a whole module on that, specifically talking about how VMware's vision for a completely software-defined data center, and even on a larger scope, a software-defined enterprise that's across the entire company, is being made possible with the latest versions of VMware's vCloud suite. Objective 2.2 is to evaluate how vCloud Automation Center, also known as vCake, which has been now renamed vRealize Automation, is able to automate the delivery of IT services. And I've got a whole module on vCake specifically. But the idea here is an automation tool that doesn't automate just VMware vSphere and the virtual infrastructure. It's able to automate just about any task related to just about any application that's happening in the data center. Objective 2.3 says that you should be able to measure how vCenter Operations Manager, which has now been renamed vRealize Operations, provides comprehensive visibility and insights into the performance, capacity, and health of the infrastructure. So in this objective, we need to know what vCenter Operations Manager does and how it performs performance and capacity monitoring and management, not just across VMware vSphere, but across the entire software-defined enterprise. And I've got an entire module on that as well. Now let's move on and talk about the remaining 3 objectives in Module 2. So Objective 2.4 is to discover how VMware Cloud Connector links your internal private cloud to public clouds so you can manage them in a single hybrid environment. To help you learn about this, I've got an entire module on vCloud Connector, which is a free VMware software application that allows you to go to a single unified interface to manage not only your internal vSphere infrastructure or private cloud, but also public clouds, specifically VMware's vCloud Hybrid Service. Objective 2.5 is to examine how VMware vCenter Site Recovery Manager, or SRM, provides automated orchestration and non-disruptive testing for virtualized applications. So VMware's SRM is a disaster recovery orchestration tool, and I've got an entire module on that. And then finally, the last objective in Module 2 is Objective 2.6, to identify vSphere products that extend the capabilities of the vCloud suite. What this means is that you need to be aware of all of the capabilities of the vCloud suite, especially VMware's advanced features, things like high availability, distributed resource scheduler, resource pooling, clustering, and then optional products such as VMware's Virtual SAN. And again, I've got a module where we will dive into this. Now let's move on. And next, let's talk about Module 3 of the VCA Cloud Blueprint. This module says that you need to be aware of VMware products, features, and components that are used to solve business challenges. So to help you to understand this and prepare for the objectives in this module, what I have is a number of common business challenges and then a list of VMware products, features, or components, and I'll ask you which of those VMware solutions should be used to solve the business challenge. So it's kind of like a test your knowledge section that I'll use to help you to prepare for Objective 3.1, which is to align VMware products, features, and components to the elasticity, efficiency, availability, and management challenges that real businesses are facing today. So that's the 3 different sections of the VCA Cloud Blueprint. It looks like we've got a lot to learn, so we better get moving. So now let's say that you're excited about VMware's cloud solutions. You're very interested in obtaining your own VCA cloud certifications. How are you going to prepare for this certification exam and make sure that you pass the first time? My first recommendation, of course, is to watch this course thoroughly. Take notes if that helps you. If you need to rewind a module and watch it again, go for it. I've designed this course around the VCA Cloud Certification Blueprint, so it should do a very good job in helping you to prepare for that certification exam. My second tip, of course, is to try to gain some sort of hands-on experience. And I think for the VCA Cloud certification, your best bet for that is to go check out the VMware Hands-On Labs. It's by far the easiest way to gain that type of hands-on experience with these complex cloud solutions. My next tip is to perform a final review for the exam, focusing on scenarios. So think about this from a business perspective. If you're a business and you have challenges around management, scalability, agility, reliability, and so forth, how can VMware's cloud solutions help you to overcome those challenges? Next, I recommend if you have questions along the way, feel free to use the Pluralsight module comment feature, where you can go on pluralsight.com and you can comment on a course module and ask questions. Or if it's specific to the VMware VCA certification, feel free to go check out the VMware VCA community website. And then once you feel that you're ready, you'll need to request exam authorization through vmware.com, and then finally pay for and take the exam online. I wish you the best of luck, and I'm confident that you'll pass the exam the first time. And with that, we've reached the summary for this module. We started off by talking about the numerous VCA Cloud preparation resources that are available to you. From there, we dove into the VCA Cloud Blueprint, taking it module by module and objective by objective. And then finally, I wrap this module up by presenting to you exactly what you need to do to pass the VCA Cloud exam the first time. Thanks for watching this module on preparing for the VCA Cloud Computing Certification. Hello and welcome to Pluralsight. You're watching Cloud Computing Concepts. In this module, I'll be providing you a foundation for everything you need to know about cloud computing. I'll start off by answering the most basic of questions. What is cloud computing? From there, we'll talk about the forms of cloud computing, cloud terminology, infrastructure as a service deployment models, and infrastructure as a service cloud characteristics. And then we'll wrap it up with how virtualization compares to infrastructure as a service cloud. So to be very candid, this module is coming from VMware's perspective of what cloud computing is. So if you're looking for a more unbiased view of cloud computing and very likely a more thorough introduction, you might want to check out my Introduction to Cloud Computing video training course, available also from pluralsight.com. But if you're just preparing for the VCA Cloud, these are the cloud computing concepts that you need to know. So we'll start this module off by answering that most basic of question, what is cloud computing? And you would think it would have a very simple, easy answer, right? But cloud computing, honestly, has become a term that has been so over-marketed by so many different companies, it's actually hard now to just put a single definition on cloud computing. According to VMware, cloud computing is an approach to computing that leverages the efficient pooling of an on-demand, self-managed virtual infrastructure. In other words, VMware is saying, take our VMware vSphere virtual infrastructure solution, pool all the resources together, compute, storage, and network, and then add an intelligent cloud management layer on top, as well as an automation solution, and then leverage that as efficiently as possible in the business. So that's VMware's definition of cloud computing. Now, in the past, cloud computing has been called numerous things. It's been called centralized computing, grid computing, distributed computing, on-demand computing, hosting, and even application service providers. So while cloud computing may have been called numerous things in the past, I want you to know that today's cloud computing is far superior than anything that looked like cloud computing in the past. So these things have similarities in the broad sense of what cloud computing is, but today's cloud computing solutions are so much more mature and so much more powerful than solutions in the past. Now, whenever I talk about cloud computing, I usually throw in a few different jokes because everyone has their own definition of cloud. I mean, Microsoft has commercials on TV where they keep saying the phrase, take it to the cloud. So no matter what problem the person has with their mobile device or with their computer, the answer always seems to be, take it to the cloud. So in this diagram here, we have a definition of what cloud computing is. It might hold the database, the app server, the code, the mobile information. Your PC might be in the cloud, and yes, even the kitchen sink you see right there in the bottom right-hand corner. So cloud computing to marketers is just a gold mine because no one really knows what it is. So you can say everything is the cloud. Here's another joke that I like, which is a couple guys looking at a whiteboard here, and they've diagrammed their business processes from last year, and they say those were far too complex. So what we've done is we've put it in the cloud, right? And they've replaced all those business processes with just this cloud that has a big question mark on it because they really don't know what's in the cloud, but it seems to fix everything. Now, back in 1977, Ken Olsen, the president, chairman, and founder of Digital Equipment Corporation, or DEC, who was the maker of big business mainframe computers, was arguing against the PC, and he was quoted as saying, there's no reason that anyone would ever want a computer in their home. Now, we know that today, most everyone has a computer in their home, but things are actually coming back full circle, and companies are moving more and more towards centralized computing, towards desktop virtualization, where those desktops are actually run in some cloud infrastructure. It could be their own private cloud, could be the public cloud, but he was actually wrong about the PC for many years, but now, again, it's coming back full circle, and people are moving more and more things to the cloud now that the cloud has matured, and now that network access from the cloud to wherever they are is a high-speed and reliable communication path. And in my mind, those were the two biggest barriers to the cloud. The cloud wasn't mature, and the accessibility to whatever data you had in the cloud just wasn't reliable and it wasn't fast. Today, those problems have been fixed, and just like Microsoft said, right, so many companies are taking it to the cloud. Now, for IT people, because of this over-marketing and overuse of the term cloud computing, the term has really become convoluted. It doesn't necessarily mean any specific thing to anyone these days. So cloud computing could be defined as really when someone else does something for you, right? That's how Microsoft is defining it. Take it to the cloud. That means whatever you were doing locally is now being done in the cloud. And for enterprise IT computing, you'll see so many things sold now as a service. So infrastructure as a service is just when you've moved your infrastructure somewhere else and someone else is running it for you in the broadest sense of the term. Software as a service is when you were running an application locally, but now you've moved it to the cloud and someone else is running that application for you. And we'll be talking about the various forms of cloud that are being sold as a service. So to help better answer that question, what is cloud computing, and give it a better definition than just some service that someone else is doing for you, let's try to narrow it down because that service should have some specific characteristics. So when you move to cloud computing, it should be sold and delivered as a service where the underlying complex IT infrastructure has been abstracted away. In other words, you don't see it anymore. So if you were running your own servers and storage and operating systems, let's say, and then you move to a cloud computing infrastructure as a service solution, you shouldn't have to deal with that underlying complex infrastructure anymore. Cloud computing should be using virtualization and pooling of resources underneath, especially in an infrastructure as a service cloud computing solution. You should be able to consume that cloud computing service on demand, just like a utility. So you shouldn't have to outlay a big chunk of capital, let's say $100,000 up front, to get started with cloud computing. You should be able to pay as you go. Now, that might be per minute, it might be per megabyte, it might be per month, or it might be per host. Whatever it is, however it's priced, you should be able to pay as you go, and then you should be able to get out of that service, that cloud computing solution, very quickly and very easily, unlike when you were purchasing your own dedicated hardware. And then finally, cloud computing should give the business or the consumer, whoever the buyer is, what they need and when they need it. So if they need access to a new application, they should get that application very quickly and very easily. If they need to scale up the number of users that are using that application from 10 to 1,000 or 10,000 overnight, the cloud computing solution should be able to provide that. So these are some of the general characteristics of what a cloud computing solution should offer. So there really is more to it than just someone doing something else for you that you were doing yourself. Yes, that is a broad, general, true definition, but hopefully these characteristics help to narrow down for you what cloud computing should be. Now let's move on and discuss the various forms of cloud computing, some of which I've mentioned already. The first form of cloud computing, and the form of cloud computing that most traditional server and virtualization admins would be familiar with, is Infrastructure as a Service, or IaaS. With Infrastructure as a Service, the cloud provider is providing you the infrastructure that you need, and this is usually delivered in the form of a virtual machine. So through a web portal, you could, as a consumer, provision a new virtual machine, install a guest operating system, install your applications, and then connect that virtual machine back to your company through a private network or directly to the internet if it was going to be, let's say, a web server. More and more companies are using infrastructure as a service to complement their internal server infrastructure. Another form of cloud computing is software as a service, or SaaS, or SaaS, as it's commonly called. And I'd be willing to bet that every one of you out there listening to this video training course is already using some kind of software as a service. For example, Google's Gmail, Hotmail, Yahoo Mail, these are all free mail applications over the internet, and they're software as a service solutions. Dropbox and Google Drive are both software as a service solutions. Most applications that you use on the internet, with the exception of perhaps web browsing, are some form of software as a service. And more companies are using software as a service instead of installing software locally at their own location or in their own data center. An example of an enterprise-grade software as a service solution is, let's say, Salesforce.com, and there are many more out there available. In fact, more and more software providers that traditionally sold you software to install locally on your own servers are instead now selling their software in a subscription-based form as a software as a service solution. The other form of cloud computing is platform as a service. With platform as a service, the cloud computing provider gives a developer a platform for them to develop their application, and then that application is hosted in the cloud. Platform as a service is a great solution for web developers to be able to rapidly deploy new web-based applications to the internet. And then finally, I've got down here X as a service. Cloud providers from around the world are thinking up new ways to leverage cloud computing every day. So far, I've heard of things like backup as a service, storage as a service, desktop as a service, disaster recovery as a service, and many more. Another way to look at the various forms of cloud computing is with this upside-down pyramid. At the lowest level, you can think of the server, storage, and network architects utilizing infrastructure as a service. And on that infrastructure runs the platform and the software and applications that are used by the application developers and end users at higher levels. The higher you go on this upside-down pyramid, the greater value and visibility to the end users you gain. Take a moment to notice who the user is of each of these different forms of cloud computing. If we start at the top, you've got software as a service. So the end users for that are real end users like you and me who want to access their email or store their pictures or videos out on the internet, or maybe they want to balance their checkbook. No matter what the application, software as a service can provide it to those end users who are just your everyday consumer, or they might be the end users at a company. And then there's application developers who are going to use the platform as a service, or PaaS, as I've heard it called. And then finally, the server storage or network architects who are going to utilize the infrastructure as a service solutions. Now let's talk about some cloud terminology that you need to know. The first term is scalable or scalability. If a cloud provider is scalable, that means that their cloud service can support whatever number of users basically you throw at it, or whatever number of virtual machines or web-based applications you throw at it. Their system can scale to meet your demands. So a cloud service provider should offer great scalability, and they should be very scalable. The second term is elastic or elasticity. A cloud provider should provide elasticity in their service such that if you need to scale up very quickly one day, they can support that. But if you need to scale down very quickly the next day, they can also support that as well. And you only pay for what you use. One example I mentioned of a need for elasticity is for retailers during the holiday season. Their internet e-commerce sites need to be very elastic such that they can scale up very quickly during the holiday season and they can scale back down after the holidays are over. The third term here is capacity. Cloud providers must have the capacity within their infrastructure to support your needs. For example, a very small cloud provider might not have the capacity available to support a very large customer who is considering moving to the cloud. And then finally, agility. And this is what the cloud providers are going to give you, is business agility. The ability for your company to react quickly and, for example, to bring up new applications or new services anytime they're needed within minutes, let's say. So whereas your competitor might have to order a server, get that server in the data center, load the operating system, load the applications, configure the applications, and bring on some test users, if you were to utilize cloud computing, your business would have much greater agility because you could, within minutes and a few clicks, bring up that same application, perform some configurations, and bring on your users. Cloud computing has been a great thing for small businesses. For example, if a small business is incorporated today, by tonight, they can have their own online system for office document sharing, creation, email collaboration. They could have an accounting system. They could have a customer relationship management system. And they could have their own specialized retail application and even be able to process credit cards. That's the type of agility that cloud computing is offering businesses of all sizes. And then a couple more terms here I'd like to throw at you. The first one is tenant or multi-tenancy. Cloud providers must have the ability to support multiple tenants or multi-tenancy. So just like in an apartment complex, where it's the responsibility of the apartment complex owner to ensure that each tenant has its own space that's cordoned off, right, with walls. Each apartment is secure. It has a door lock and maybe a deadbolt. And that each apartment is self-contained, for example. Each apartment has its own electricity, heating, cooling, and water supply. And that same analogy applies to a cloud provider, especially an infrastructure as a service cloud provider. So if I were going to move, let's say, 25 of my virtual machines to an infrastructure as a service cloud provider, I would want to ensure that my data and my virtual machines and the applications inside are all secure from the other tenants that are running inside the same cloud and might be sharing the same storage and the same virtualization hosts as my virtual machines. I also want to ensure that the network is secure so that those other tenants aren't accidentally or maliciously getting into my data and my applications over the shared network. A cloud provider might also want to offer backup as a service to those infrastructure as a service customers, but they would need a backup product that also supports multi-tenancy, right? Because that backup data is going to be copied from the multiple tenants and their multiple virtual machines to a single backup repository, for example, and you would want to ensure that that data is encrypted and kept completely secure from other customers' data. And then the last term or set of terms here are the security concepts that you need to think about. And the best acronym that I think of is CIA because that's very synonymous with security. But in this case, the letter CIA stand for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And a cloud provider should be able to provide you each of these things, especially if they support multi-tenancy. So confidentiality just means that your data is going to be kept secure from prying eyes. No one else can see your data. Integrity, your data is not going to be able to be modified by anyone except you, or perhaps a system administrator, but it must be logged, and the purpose must be logged, right? And then availability, your data must always be available. Your servers shouldn't go down, and if they do go down, there should be some sort of service level agreement to ensure that you get financial compensation for that downtime. And availability also points to performance and capacity. Your servers should always perform well so that you can access them. They're always available on the network, and you can access them within so many milliseconds, which should also be in your service level agreement. So keep that acronym in mind, CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability when it comes to secure multi-tenancy within cloud computing environments. Now let's talk about some infrastructure as a service deployment models. So let's say that you're an enterprise and you're really impressed with the benefits that infrastructure as a service can provide for you and your company, or perhaps you're a consultant and you want to understand the different ways that you can help your customers move to infrastructure as a service. Let's look at the different ways that infrastructure as a service could be deployed. The first one would be to use a private cloud deployment model. With private cloud, you take your existing VMware vSphere infrastructure and you add on top of that a cloud management platform, or a CMP. Now, traditionally, VMware's CMP has been vCloud Director, but recently they announced that vCloud Director is going to be a service provider only product. That means that the traditional enterprise cannot use vCloud Director in a private cloud model. So because of that, in a private cloud today, you would use vCloud Automation Center, which has now been renamed vRealize Automation. You could use vRealize Automation not only to automate your own internal cloud, but also to connect to cloud service providers. The second deployment model would be a hybrid cloud. Now, you can think of a hybrid cloud simply as an enterprise cloud or a private cloud connected to a public cloud. Once you have that bridge between the two, you've created what they call a hybrid cloud. Honestly, there's nothing more to it than that. It's just a secure connection between a private cloud and a public cloud. So you can think of a hybrid cloud really as just two different data centers or two different clouds working together. In a hybrid cloud scenario, perhaps you're running your dev and test environment in the cloud service provider and you're running production on the enterprise cloud. Or perhaps during times of high load, you need to scale up into the public cloud and increase your transaction processing capacity using the cloud service provider. And then when that demand goes down, you scale down or you shrink down the virtual machines that you're running in the public cloud. But all the time with the hybrid cloud, these two clouds are connected and working together. And it's important to point out that in concept, both the private cloud and the hybrid cloud could be 100% off the internet. So usually when you think of a cloud service provider, you think about servers, let's say running in Amazon Web Services, that are directly connected to the internet, and they're running, let's say, internet websites, which is by far the most common type of virtual machine and application running in a cloud service provider that's connected to the internet. But many companies use infrastructure as a service running in cloud service providers for applications that never need to be connected to the internet. And then moving on, another type of cloud I want to talk about is the community cloud. So what is a community cloud? Well, it's a collaborative cloud effort where you have a shared cloud infrastructure and you have a common goal. Traditionally, you have shared costs between all the parties that are involved, and typical examples are universities, utilities, or government entities. For example, a state might create a community cloud, and then all the government entities in the state would be able to leverage that community cloud. Instead of trying to run their own data centers, let's say spread across the state, perhaps they're able to reduce costs by sharing the cost of this single community cloud. Now let's talk about some infrastructure as a service cloud characteristics. So what are some of the traits or characteristics of these infrastructure as a service clouds that you might be considering. The first one is that they have to be 100% virtualized. There's no completely dedicated physical servers in these environments. If you want to deploy a new application within seconds or a few minutes, it's going to have to be a virtual environment. The second one is that it has to have some sort of self-service. Just giving someone access to the vSphere client doesn't make it an infrastructure as a service cloud. You need some sort of automation and self-service portal where the complexities of traditional virtualization administration can be abstracted away and new applications can be deployed within minutes. Speaking of those applications, the cloud should provide you some sort of catalog of virtual appliances or applications that can be deployed on demand, as I said, within minutes. The cloud should provide service level agreements, or SLAs, with the business, whether it's a private cloud or a public cloud, to ensure that the cloud is meeting the needs of the business. Cloud should have flexible resource pooling so that the resources available in the cloud are shared and that those resources can be carved up and dynamically reallocated to fit your business needs. And then finally, the cloud should be highly available, such that these applications never go down or seemingly never go down. Most public cloud service providers provide a 99.9 or greater percentage of uptime for the year. Those are some of the characteristics you should look for. Let's talk about a few more. The first one is automation. I've mentioned vRealize Automation, which is VMware's automation tool. Whether you're using that tool in a private cloud or you're utilizing a public cloud with vCloud Director, either tool is going to give you some type of automation, which will abstract away the traditional server, storage, and network administrative type tasks that typically have to be performed when you deploy a new, let's say, physical server, operating system, and application. Infrastructure as a service clouds should be highly secure and they should support multiple tenants, whether it's an in-house private cloud and you've carved up that cloud environment between multiple business divisions, or whether it's a massive public cloud like Amazon Web Services or vCloud Air, it must securely support multiple tenants so that other customers can't possibly gain access to your company's data. Infrastructure as a service cloud should support resource reporting and billing such that each week or month you could get a report on your resource utilization and what the approximate cost is of those resources. If it's an in-house cloud, you might just be doing show back instead of charge back. In other words, you might not actually be billing the usage for the cloud back to the individual business unit. However, on the other hand, in a large infrastructure public cloud like vCloud Air, they'll certainly be billing that utilization back to each one of the tenants or the customers of that public cloud. In order to move to a public cloud from the perspective of the traditional IT person or server admin, you will need to change the way you think about IT a bit. No longer is it about servers, storage, and networking. Cloud is simply about running the virtual machines and their associated applications that you need when you need them. And finally, you'll need to educate your business to help them change the way they think about IT as well. You'll need to educate them that the IT department and the cloud is available and ready to support their business needs and run the applications that they want to run when they need them. Essentially, it's computing on demand. Moving on, now let's talk about how virtualization compares to infrastructure as a service cloud. Now, there's been a lot of confusion on this. A lot of people think just because they have virtualization, they have a cloud. And that's probably not true. Let's find out more to make sure we know the complete answer to that question. So, server virtualization is required for cloud computing. And that's because server virtualization brings the scalable infrastructure, the elastic computing that's required for a cloud. It brings resource sharing and pooling at the infrastructure level. I'm talking about resources like CPU, memory, storage, and network. It brings load balancing of those resources. Load balancing of CPU and memory, for example, is brought with VMware's Distributed Resource Scheduler. Load balancing of storage can be found with VMware's Storage Distributed Resource Scheduler. Virtualization can also bring high availability with VMware's vSphere HA, or High Availability You can ensure that if a server fails or if a guest operating system hangs, all of the virtual machines on that host are automatically restarted within minutes, or that individual virtual machine with a home guest operating system will be automatically restarted as well. Virtualization also brings the portability, so when you containerize your virtual machines, they're then hardware independent, and you can move a running virtual machine from host to host. You can even move a virtual machine from one cloud to another cloud. Virtualization also brings cloning. So if I want to duplicate a virtual machine, essentially, I can very quickly duplicate that virtual machine one or many times and bring up, let's say, a whole server farm of, for example, web servers or email servers or application servers. So virtualization has so many benefits, and it brings so many of the requirements to an infrastructure as a service cloud. But just because you have virtualization, does that mean that you have a cloud? And the answer to that is no. So what does a cloud management platform and a cloud automation tool give you that server virtualization alone doesn't provide? The first piece of that puzzle is the secure multi-tenancy. So an infrastructure as a service cloud must ensure that the multiple customers or tenants are completely secure from the other tenants. And that's what VMware's vCloud Director is able to provide in VMware's vCloud Air, as well as through the vCloud service providers. Another piece of the puzzle is self-service. The end users or the tenants or customers must be able to create new virtual networks and create new virtual machines and new policies on demand without worrying about the traditional server storage and network administration tasks. An infrastructure as a service cloud must also provide a service level agreement so that you have an agreed upon level of availability and performance. Infrastructure as a service clouds must also provide reporting and billing so that you know what your usage is of the cloud platform. And of course, you would receive a bill based on your usage. And then finally, you need complete automation throughout compute, storage, and networking so that, again, the traditional administrative duties of managing the servers, the storage, the networking, as well as the virtualization layer are completely abstracted away from you. And you can just worry about getting access to the applications that you need when your company needs them. Hello and welcome to Pluralsight. You're watching how VMware's cloud solutions